Great, we'll get started. Have a good webinar. Good afternoon, everybody. We're gonna get started in a couple of minutes, and while you're waiting, if you could answer the poll questions that we have up, that would be awesome. And also, if in the chat or by your name, if you want to tell us who you are or put your affiliation, that would be awesome so that everybody else knows who's here. So either click on your name under participants and change it to add your affiliation, or go ahead and put it in the chat. And we have all our panelists here, so that's great. While everybody's doing the poll, I'm just going to give a brief introduction, and I think we're going to start to record. Right. Brief introduction about what we're doing here today and what we hope to expect from the process. So welcome everybody. Again, my name is Seema Iyer from the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance and the University of Baltimore, and really excited about this partnership with our colleagues at Towson University, sorry, not Towson State, that's been a while, and the South Big Data Hub, which is part of a National Science Foundation network of learning around big data. This is going to be our panel for today. Again, I'm Seema Iyer. Mike McGuire and I are going to kind of co-moderate this session. And then we're really grateful to have Andrew Turner, Anthony Pozzo, Laura Lyons, and Cheryl Knott with us today to talk about the Esri Open Data Hub. And the reason why we're talking about this today is because we're trying to figure out what kind of portal, the pros and cons of different kinds of portals for different kinds of needs. And we have been using the Esri portal for a long time. For those of you that don't know who we are, just let me give you a quick overview. We are part of the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership. We're the Baltimore partner. And there are 30 cities around the country that are part of the partnership, learning how to give data in the hands of communities. And we're lucky to have Laura here, who's part of that group. The Data Driven Detroit is part of that network, and bringing basically information as openly as possible for all of our communities. Our signature product is the Vital Signs Report. We've been doing that since data from 2000, and it's accessible on our main website. But Cheryl is going to talk a lot about how we converted a lot of that data onto an open data portal over the last couple of years, and things that we've learned through the process and how it works for us, and how we can communicate to communities using the open data portal. Briefly, we started a project with Towson, Bowie State, and UMBC. UMBC is a lead institution on something called the Baltimore Data Science Corps. It's a National Science Foundation Harnessing the Data Revolution grant. And we are working to make sure that we have some way to educate in a more standardized way students in data science, but also enabling their data science skills to be used for helping cities like Baltimore, which is a core mission of what Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators is all about, but trying to really make sure that students and the next generation of data science experts are going to benefit from all of the stuff that we've figured out over the last couple of years. So here we are with a grant from the South Big Data Hub to think about all these students from these various institutions that are analyzing data and actually creating data in some cases. How can we collate that data and put it out into an open data portal for students to use, not only with the data science core, but also other students that might be interested in data that might be useful for cities like Baltimore. So that's the goal. We're trying to figure out these fundamental questions about what open data technology can help us do. And for those of you that might have actually engaged in open data technology, these might be questions that you have as well. So hopefully this is useful from a little bit more on the technical back-end side of open data technology. And we're looking forward to having that conversation with all of you today. So here is the results of your poll. Again, welcome everybody. Good to see, hopefully for our panelists, kind of who you're talking to, who the audience is. We have university, faculty, staff, government, private organizations, and then a pretty broad range of familiarity with the Esri software. So hopefully that's useful to you as you give your opening talk. And each one of them is going to talk for a little while, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So thanks again for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Anthony and Andrew.
Let me unmute. Good afternoon, everybody. Seema, thank you for that introduction. And can you see my screen?
Yep, you're good to go.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us today, and it's nice to be with you. My name is Anthony Puzo. I'm a business development team lead for state and local government from Esri. I've been with Esri about 12, 13 years, worked pretty heavily in the Maryland, DC area. Been engaged with the state of Maryland and even Seema and her team as the last 10, 12 years. So happy to be with you today. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is Arcgis Hub and some of the use cases and how people are using it today. And then I also have with me is Andrew Turner. He runs our DC Research and Development Lab. It's located in Arlington, Virginia. Andrew, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks. I lead the team as a chief architect and lead developer of our Arcgis Hub. I've been working in open data and data integration standards for about 18 years, originally building satellites, but then on making sure the data are easily consumable by people. So yeah, so I build a lot of technology here, and definitely excited to share what we've been building, and also hear your questions and hopefully answer some of them.
Excellent, thanks, Andrew. So I'm going to go through a little bit about just Arcgis Hub and what that is, and how people are using it here in DC and in the state of Maryland. And then I've asked Andrew to showcase about what's moving forward, how people are going to use it in the future. So Arcgis Hub is actually part of our larger cloud platform called Arcgis Online. That's where we have millions of people discovering, using, making, and sharing all kinds of different geographic maps, applications, dashboards. You might be familiar with things like the Johns Hopkins dashboard for COVID reporting. That's hosted on Arcgis Online fully. We had over 2 trillion hits on that dashboard last year. So it's a cloud platform heavily used by a variety of different universities, state and local government, federal government, nonprofit, commercial organizations. One of the apps that is included with Arcgis Online is called Arcgis Hub, formerly Open Data. This is included with every Arcgis Online organization. And with that, you can do a couple of different things. One, you can share data. We don't feel like you need to buy or have something separate just to share your data. So we've organized this in a way that's attached to your Arcgis Online organization, where you're already building out applications and sharing data, and building out other maps. And you can share all kinds of different data, whether it's geographic information or tabular information. You can share that, and you can publish that out through some open geospatial standard APIs, or you can have people download that information. You can create really nice looking websites through this. So if you're ever familiar with like Squarespace or Wix or something, Arcgis Hub has a website builder built into this that you can drag and drop pictures and videos and really make a nice experience to give the context around the content that you're sharing. You can organize this, and I'll show you this on how folks are using this to organize around initiatives, whether you have a neighborhood cleanup or some other initiative going on in your community. I'm going to show you some that DC is doing around Vision Zero and Move DC on really getting people out using transportation and other means around the city. So you can really organize the data around that context. How you collaborate with other individuals. So through the way that we've architected Arcgis Hub, you can really bring in data from other organizations, whether other universities or other state and local entities or commercial businesses or nonprofits, and you can create a one-stop shop for all that data. And then you can inspire people and really give the context around how you can get people involved in what's going on. And it's a full system. So one of the users I wanted to highlight here is around DC government, the District of Columbia. They're one of our early adopters for Arcgis Open Data, and now they're sharing upwards of 1,500 data sets through this. And this is their one open data site throughout the city. They've organized this around a one-stop shop, so it's opendata.dc.gov. They've organized all of their different apps and web maps that they have. And one of the things that they're doing really well is, even though they're sharing out 1,500 data sets, they're providing these other resources to really provide the context around some of their high dollar, what they call high dollar data sets. So something like addressing you would think is kind of easy to do and easy to explain, but really there's a lot that goes into addressing, especially in DC. And what they do is here is within Arcgis Hub, they're giving the context about what goes on with addressing and what goes into it, and how many different address points, and then the address points and the intersections and how they all kind of relate to one another. And through this, you can get the context about what's going on with addressing in the city, and then also actually get to the address data itself. So here's the address data page. Here's all the information that they're sharing behind it. So you can get the overview of that data set. You can go through here and see the different data points that's in it. You can explore the data itself. You can look at the API that's with it. You can download this information. So you could download this in a spreadsheet, a KML, or a shape file. You can even attach other files to this, or you can write an API to this. So WMS service or JSON services, all these are built in out of the box functionality within Arcgis Hub, so you can do all that. And then you can also see the metadata behind that. So DC is showing all the different metadata around this, when it was updated last, the description, all the different keywords with this. So they keep a really nice tab on what's going on, and this is done with all of their different data sets. And then you can open that right into like a story map or a web map in Arcgis Online. So you can do a lot of different things with that data itself, and this is all out of the box. Another thing that DC does is they talk about their, this is another really important fact, they talk about their data report. So this is all about their inventory, what they're doing, how they collect that information, and then how they build that into their data plan. Not their open data plan, their full data plan for the city. So some of that is open, some of it's not. And they catalog everything, and they explain that really well in this page here. And then they share out some of their visualizations and developer tools and other things that they're adding with this site. Some of the other departments are actually taking advantage of that and providing their own context with their data. So DC Octo, the IT group, is doing the open data platform for the whole city. Well, DC DOT has their own ways that they want to share their data and align that with geography, like these different wards and how there are different projects going around these different wards, and their citywide programs. So things like Move DC, which takes part of all the multimodal transportation, their Vision Zero initiative, their urban forestry groups on where they're planting trees and where they're not. So all that information is in a one-stop shop, so they can provide that context around it. So DC does a really good job on sharing out this information, sticking with the plan, and then letting the other departments tell their story with that same data and getting that out in easy readable formats. The other one I want to talk about is the state of Maryland. So state of Maryland has another early adopter for open data. they're sharing out all kinds of different data sets, thousands and thousands, hundreds of data sets, and they're aligning them with their featured interests. So emergency management, environment, community, and transportation. And same thing as DC, Maryland DOT is sharing out their own context of that open data. So they're sharing out different maps, dashboards, sometimes they're static maps, sometimes they're interactive maps, all kinds of different applications here that pertain to the business of Maryland DOT. One way they're also doing that is aligning that data with different initiatives. Like one is their capital improvement projects around the state. So they're using Arcgis Hub to explain what's going on with that. And then the back end is all data driven. So it's driven by the same data that they're putting into their maps. And so you can hover around here and you can see different projects that are going around the state. And then they're also explaining what's going on with that specific project, where they are in the project plan. Where is that project? How can you follow that on social media? All this is deeply embedded into Arcgis Hub and how you can build that engagement strategy around that. And then the state is also using Arcgis Hub as their main platform for coronavirus. So if you go to coronavirus.maryland.gov, this is entirely hosted in Arcgis Online using Hub to deliver that. So they've had over 70 million hits on this site, over 10 million different users for this since it was launched March 14th. And the nice thing is that they're not only are they sharing the dashboard and all the context around COVID-19, but they're also sharing the actual data sets behind this. So you can get to that data set, you can download it and do all that same thing. Some of it's location-based, some of it's just tabular. Like this one here is just tabular. So a lot of different things you can do with this site. So with that, so I'll give you a little bit of context about Arcgis Hub and who's using it. And now I want to hand it over to Andrew just to show a little bit about what's coming with Arcgis Hub and how we're expanding on that same platform. Andrew, you might be on mute.
Hi, thanks, Anthony. I'm going to show you a little bit behind the scenes, just show you a little bit what what kind of goes on behind it. I'm not going to obviously do a full walkthrough, but I'm going to show you then some of the things to how to have multiple publishing data, how to manage metadata, and also some of the improvements we're making that we'll let you know that are coming up over the next few months. So one thing, this is on the our own website that we use for my team is actually as a hub site. We eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, so we use it ourselves. And just if you ever wanted to go here and find out more about our team, dcsri.com, but also we have down here in the bottom a map of every single hub around the world. So there's about 10,000 or more hubs around the world. So this is a cool way to go geographically explore state ones, regional ones, city ones, just to get inspired by what else is going on. But I'm going to hop back in behind this. And again, everything we're doing here is to make this as easy as possible to manage and collaborate around. So Anthony highlighted, just mentioned that there's a whole WYSIWYG engine here for adding information, so text and media onto the website. It's as easy as drag and drop like that. But what I want to highlight for you is how you actually contribute content here, right? How do I actually upload information into the system and share it out appropriately? And I want to highlight that you can share geographic and non-geographic, like Anthony showed. You can also share out data privately to say only certain people based on workflows of QA before it's released, as well as if data is very sensitive. So, it's as simple as when I want to add content, I can drag and add it via URL, or I can upload. And as I mentioned, this is just going to be a PDF that I want to share out. Drag and drop it there. This is a report that I want to share out with somebody. So I'm going to add that tag. I can share it to myself, the team of people working on this site, my entire organization. So in this case, my hub team, but it could be the city, could be a department, or to the public right away. Right, and this is simple metadata just to make it very easy to contribute right away. And I'll save it. I'll actually upload the PDF document now into the repository. It actually registers all of this metadata and is part of what we call our site catalog, what Anthony showed you can search through. Now, a couple of things we're doing here, I'll highlight and I'll show you some examples, is you're gonna be able to configure the metadata you capture at upload time. So we're always adding more formats, but also going to say, hey, minimum viable, I need to capture actually phone number and department, or you can capture address and a category. So you're going to be able to capture all of this information as much as you want to. For purposes, I'll hop over to here. I've already uploaded. This is a whole geospatial data set. So once it's been uploaded, I have privilege because I'm able to manage this data set. I can click edit here. And of course, my bandwidth is going to be slow. I can edit the metadata here, and it's going to allow me to configure very easily any of the title, descriptions, other attribute values, and so on. And what's great about this is all stored back into the metadata behind the scenes here. So it's all available as an API for the metadata, as well as the formal metadata in FGDC and ISO and so on. So what you hear is a very simple metadata editor for basic information. And then what we're doing over the next few months is we're providing more information, a rich boundary picker and license pickers, different ways to set alias and attribute names and descriptions of units as well. And this is something that's coming across the platform, coming first into Hub. So besides that, besides making it really easy to upload information, change the metadata, I mentioned sharing it to other people as appropriate. We're also focusing on different ways to make the data explorable. So this is a very early version. We're doing some rapid development on it. New ways to show the metadata behind the data set. So this is DC's urban forestry tree trees data set with a new view we're working on and expanding here. It's going to allow you to actually bring more of the formal metadata forward. So this is the simple metadata. We're going to allow you to configure and saying, hey, I don't want someone to drill through to find the metadata. I want them to find it right here, contact phone number, hours of operation, alias names, and so on. But what's really interesting is we're providing new ways also to explore the data. So we're dramatically improving the overall data exploration experience in Hub of the data, again, whether it's open data or sensitive and protected data. So in this, there's a full map view of the data set, leveraging more of the capabilities in the web GIS for mapping in ArcGIS, but also really great ways to filter this data down. So we're building automatic filters. If this is the diameter of the tree, so I only want large trees, and I can also do them perhaps by common name, and I only want to find maple trees. So we're thinking of a lot of ways in which individual data consumers, constituents, businesses, things like that can easily find the data they're interested in. Again, I can filter into just a geographic neighborhood nearby where I live in DC, and then I can filter down to just that data set, and there's none of those Amber maples near me. I go find some of those, and I can finally then download that one data set, or we've actually built in tools to create web maps and things like that. So we've built a full web map integration system here that allows you to build rich web maps that then using things like Storymaps and so on. So again, that's a couple examples. Again, if you want to see some other, Anthony highlighted a few, but we also have a Arcgis Hub Gallery. Just a lot of other examples if you want to be inspired by what's possible with this system, what other cities and counties and nonprofits are doing to communicate the data and information using ArcGIS Hub. And there was one other question I had also about other ways to process metadata. I want to highlight that ArcGIS Hub is part of it's built with ArcGIS Online. There's a full now Python notebooks integrated to it. So, and why that's really interesting is Python notebooks, if you've ever used them with Jupyter notebooks, you can do a lot of really cool data analysis. So we're publishing out ourselves a lot of example Python notebooks that you can run entirely in the web. In this case, it's analyzing crash statistical data around DC. So in this case, the analyst has written a whole preamble about their methodology. Then they write Python to do the analysis, going all the way through this using pandas and TensorFlow and PyTorch and so on to eventually get, in this case, a simple analysis of crashes by hours of the day. But you can also do a lot more complicated analyses and charting and displays of data utilizing all the open data. And nice, it ties in directly to the underlying data set. So as the data updates, your analysis can update as well. These are also used heavily, not just for data analysis, but also metadata quality control. So we actually publish out a lot of notebooks that allow you to administer these. And just I saw one earlier, everything from checking for broken URLs, validate item metadata, you can do exports and archives as well, utilizing these Python notebooks that tie into that system and can be automated to run periodically as well. So with that, I will wrap up for now and pass it on.
Super exciting. Just to clarify, the Python notebook integration is a future thing, or is that there already?
That's there today. So Python notebooks were launched a year and a half ago as part of ArcGIS. They're part of ArcGIS Online. They tie into ArcGIS Hub today. And then the one thing in the roadmap coming up is in Hub, you'll actually be able to highlight and share the notebooks as content items as well, just thinking about transparency and methodologies and algorithms. So you can do that through ArcGIS Online today. We're just going to deepen that integration into Hub in the near future as well.
Thanks so much, Andrew and Anthony. And please put your chat questions in the chat for now. We will have time for talking at the end of this, but we're going to go ahead and talk to some users of the Hub and start out with our friends from Detroit. Laura, thank you so much for being here. And we're so looking forward to hearing how you guys have, I think, one of the longest users of the Hub in Detroit. And so hearing about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm going to try and share my screen and hopefully this works. All right. Okay, hopefully someone can see our open data portal. So as Siva said, I'm Laura Lyons. I work for Data Driven Detroit. We are the National Neighborhood Indicator Partnership organization that represents Detroit. We were founded in 2005 and we were part of a nonprofit group back then. In 2015, we transformed into a L3C, a low limited liability company, and we're in the process of becoming employee owned. So we've kind of gone through a lot of transitions. One thing that's definitely been consistent though is using Esri's, as Anthony said, it started as just the open data kind of platform, and now it's transitioned into Hub. So we're big fans of Hub. What you're seeing right now is our open data portal. So one of the reasons that we exist is to provide up-to-date, accurate, local data to community members, nonprofits, philanthropy, residents. And so that this, Esri's Hub pretty much makes it incredibly simple for us. I don't have any development background or any type of coding or anything like that. And using Hub has been seamless for me. We do, our IT director at D3 was able to set it up and she did most of that. But in terms of any concern about really kind of having to know the back end things, what I like about Hub so much is that it really allows for kind of like the average data user to get into the data, to use it, to visualize it, to store it in a way that's organized. Since we work in data all the time, and I know we have a variety of participants today, at least for D3, one of our biggest struggles and victories is the plethora of data and its availability and what to do with it, right? So what we try and do is we try and make it accessible to the public. So sometimes that means taking, just a standard American Community Survey data set and, analyzing in a way that uses some of our internal skills and then produces more of a curated data set for citizens. Because a lot of times, even if you had, if your nonprofit or your organization or your department might have the skill set to do some of that data analysis, sometimes it's not the time, right? You don't have the time. So that's kind of a little bit about Data Driven Detroit. I'm the senior GIS analyst and project lead here. So any spatial data is kind of where I like to do my song and dance. But I want to walk through our open data portal, which I don't want to make it sound too easy because there's a lot of things you can do to customize it, but I think that we rolled out our data portal within like 2 or 3 days, which was incredible. And so basically, what you're seeing is a lot of what I liked about how it's built and customizable is it's really that drag and drop kind of properties. It allows for branding. It doesn't get too complicated, which is one thing that we really wanted to make sure our open data portal was accessible to the average, citizen, resident. So that's important to us. So just scrolling down, it's real simple. We use ours, we organize it, and I think we have 10 buckets here. Some of these are D3's bread and butter, and other data sets are just ones that we try and house for the public. So a lot of these you can see in front, standard search bar. I'll go into that in a minute just to show one of our data sets. And then what was nice about this is that it also allows us to feature tools as we have. So not only are we in the search contents, we're able to link to all of our data sets, our web maps, our web apps, those kinds of things, but also our tools that we maybe didn't use Hub for, or some reports or anything. We have these will all link to our website, which focus and highlight some of our other tools and products and services. So that's a nice way that it's really seamless into our website as well. And then just at the bottom, we just have an Ask D3 site. So it's a nice way, it's named Hub, but it does seem to serve that purpose of combining a lot of our data sets and a lot of our service and products into one place. So I know Seema provided a couple points of areas of interest for this group. One thing that for D3, for how we use the Hub, the most important part, and I'm just going to search anything just so that we have some data sets coming up. Our biggest struggle is always making our data, it's pretty much document. I think documenting your data, we work in data, we go from raw data to real clean and analyzed data. The biggest thing as you're thinking through how you want to use your data, how you want it out in the world, how you want it stored, is going to be working through that process and really identifying all the steps along the way and documenting it. Because I know Seema mentioned multiple publishers, multiple users. If you've worked in data at all, the minute somebody else touches your data, most of the time they have a different way of doing it. So what's important we've found is that no matter what analyst is working with the data from start to finish, documenting is going to be the most important part. We're a long way from being perfect by any means, but we really are trying to kind of focus and streamline our process for what we do with when we get that raw data to when we're finalizing it and putting it up on the web. So just for example, and one, so we have, I just want to run through a couple things that are on here. As Anthony and Andrew mentioned, the Hub allows for not just data sets here. You can see we have college enrollment by Michigan House Representative District, kind of real specific data sets. But then we also, we were provided vital records data sets from the state of Michigan. We were able to provide the lead blood levels by a bunch of different geographies. But besides just feature layers, we have some web mapping applications on here. Not to mention some of our data sets, it's not just one source, right? Here you can have, we're sharing other layers from other entities. If we're just looking at data-driven Detroit sources and we want to look at, one of our mapping applications, just want to make sure that we can see this. We did a mapping application that worked with census response rates for the city of Detroit as they were trying to target areas that had that low response rate. And it might take a minute or two to load here. So, just a tool right off the bat that's able to, not only do we have some of these layers, let's see. So we have a bunch of these layers. These are all layers that are stored on our Hub, but also we're able to combine them, into a web app, which is stored on our Hub. And let me see if I can get back. So I know Andrew talked a little bit about the metadata process that Hub is using. D3 can always get better at that. I think everybody can always get better at their metadata and their documentation. What we had just done in the past, at least for some of our older levels, like our lead blood levels, whenever we train an analyst to kind of get on board with the publishing process, the biggest thing again is documentation. I'm not going to be able to read their mind on what they did. They're not going to read my mind on what I did. So we just, we're kind of putting a Band-Aid on a cut for a while, where we would just click here and they would open up an Excel sheet with the metadata attached to that. We really make sure with our multiple publishers, we focus on a couple things, that documentation. The idea is that if anyone were to open this page to look at the lead data set, what we're trying to do is avoid a phone call from them to ask us details about it. We love talking to the public, but we think it's important to provide all the information to them as they're looking at the data all in one place. So the thought that always is in our heads for one publisher or many is all the information I have about this data set needs to be documented and needs to be attached to that data set so it doesn't get lost. Because what you're trying to do is provide so much information that no one will have any questions about it, right? It's always the goal. So that's what we kind of keep in mind. The other big thing for D3, at least with our data sets, is going to be the tagging system. And the tagging system is, let's see, what do we have here? Yeah, some of these it's still a little messy. We're still working on it. But this is a great function of the hub, so that, if you're looking for one particular topic, let me see if this will work at all today. So yeah, we work with a lot of Detroit data. We could work with tagging. This is just a children tag system. So for us, it was setting up a tagging protocol internally about, simple things like use underscores or don't use underscores, don't use compound keywords, like make it as simple as you can, and things like that. Because, as the more and more we do it with multiple publishers or multiple analysts, as long as you have that protocol and you keep following it and you keep revising it, that's going to be the best way to have like clean data, which is, I think, what everybody is kind of looking for, right? A data dump is wonderful to have that access in that information, but if it's not accessible and understandable, then the data really is not of use to people. So the more you can make that data clean and organized, the better use it will be. At least we believe into the world, into the audience. So I think the kind of key, some of the points that I want to drive home are the fact that have a process for you and your analysts or your partners or just for yourself, because maybe in 6 months you're going to be doing something completely different than the way you started it. So have that process and follow it. And I would definitely recommend using the tagging system. That's a great way to kind of organize your data and your subjects. And then besides that, just keeping in mind that our goal, at least for D3, and everybody has their own end goal, is just to provide data that is easy to access. You shouldn't have to have a degree in data analysis to understand some of these data sets. That's what one of our goals is. So we try and make it as clear and as simple, as clean as possible. With that, just want to make sure that I touch on all the things. I think that's probably it for now. So I'll pass it back over to Stephen.
And you're still going to be around to answer questions as we go forward. But really excited about that last thing that you mentioned about standards. And we could probably have a whole conversation about that when Cheryl is over.
Yeah.
But I am going to turn it over to Cheryl to tell you about our own portal and things that she's learned over the past couple of years on how to do it.
Yes. Thank you. And I'm so pleased that so many folks were able to join us this afternoon to have this conversation. I will say the downside of going last after so many great presentations is that I really just want to pull up PowerPoint and put up a slide that says what they said. So I would, I would love to start going through some of these points, but, the one thing that I think will be coming out and being very abundantly clear is that, we're all kind of thinking through ways of of using the Esri Hub to share information and make sure that as this information is going out into the world, it's usable, it's understandable, and can really power a lot of powerful analyses. So I'm going to bear with me for a moment as I pull up my PowerPoint slides. Okay, so my name is Cheryl Knott. As Seema mentioned, I am the research manager for the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance. I've been with our organization for coming up on 14 years this spring. So I initially started at the organization just as a GIS assistant, working my way up, wearing many hats in a very small organization. And so I've been very much thinking about GIS and how all this data and information can be shared to a dynamic online audience. So we're going to talk a little bit about our vital signs indicator project, and then also talk about some of the portals, these hubs that we've created to help disseminate this information. So at the start of our conversation, Seema described a little bit about the Vital Signs project. So over 20 years ago, the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance was created to help share information about Baltimore's neighborhoods. So it was this idea of data democratization. So putting data and information into the hands of community organizations, activists, researchers, policymakers, so that all of this information is unlocked. So if you have a question about your community, rather than calling a whole bunch of different agencies, you can come to one place and have a one-stop shop for data and information. So we've been pulling all this data into a report and to a data set called Vital Signs. We are currently in the process of working on our 19th iteration of this. So we've got definitely some longitudinal data across 8 different topic areas. And we pulled together all of this data from so many different sources. We analyze it ourselves, and then we use web platforms to share out aggregate or community level information about Baltimore's neighborhoods. So if you had a question about crime data, housing data, education, 20 years ago, you would have to pull out a physical report that was printed that had all of the data tables and information and a little bit of a narrative. So talking about some of the trends that are going on citywide and in some of the neighborhoods. Well, not everybody, can easily take that PDF document that's been printed out and actually throw it into a statistical analysis package. You can't take a piece of, you can, but, trying to make a map about crime and safety in a neighborhood from a piece of paper is pretty darn difficult. And so BNIA made the transition and started publishing some of our open data sets, initially as flat Excel files. We had these on our website. We also had started partnering with the city of Baltimore on their open data portal to start publishing these flat files. And so these were annual cuts of data. They were just data tables. They didn't have that spatial geographic components to it. They weren't shape files. They weren't file geodatabases. And a couple of years ago, as we were prepping to release a newer edition of Vital Signs, I said, hey, let me try this hub thing out. And within literally a couple hours, we had started pulling the pieces together, and then we were able to start sharing out this data and information. So this is a quick view of what our open data portal looks like. So this is our hub site that we just published all of our community indicators. And so what we've done, and initially we started thinking about, okay, well, let's try to get as many data sets on here as possible with the easiest workflow for staff, mostly myself. And so we had originally started using this portal, sharing out annual cuts of data by topic. So all of our housing data for 1 year was in one file. And then if you wanted a different community indicator, that would be in a different data set. And so in the spring of 2020, we said, let's reconfigure this. So on our current open data portal, you can now access information for each indicator for all years that we have it available after 2010. So on our portal, you can access this information by either doing a keyword search or by browsing across one of our 8 different topic areas. And so in addition to having this landing page where you can access these data pieces, we also have links to those narratives. So those chapter reports that describe what's going on in Baltimore's neighborhoods in relation to these topic areas. So I was recently pulling some of our analytics, and in 2020, so this includes even a little bit of the time before we launched our reset of community indicators by data set versus by topic, we've had over 28,000 hits onto this landing page, which is pretty cool. So this might look a little bit familiar from some of the other presentations, but once you've selected a community indicator, you can have the ability to download it, and we have a few of different versions available for it. You can point to the APIs if you're really cool and savvy and want to build out your own product. And it's been really important to have attached, like directly with this data and this information, a description. So what is this indicator? What does it mean? What are some calculation considerations? And then also providing the source. So where did BNIA get this data when we analyzed it? And then the years that we have available in this data set. So prior to all of this, way back in our very, very early days of publishing open data, we had an Excel file that had the data, and then we had a PDF with all of our codebook information. And sometimes those things weren't connected. So if you lost that PDF with those explanations and those definitions, you were kind of stuck trying to figure out, okay, what does this statistic actually measure? So we've tried to make sure that with all of our metadata, we have all this source information, we have credit. You can come back to see BNIA.jfi.org, our website. You can find out all of the information about that data set. So we try to make that as robust as possible and use some keywords so you can figure out, again, how does this particular statistic tie back in with the overall topics and things that we look at. And of course, if you have a Esri account, and we've been pushing for community organizations to actually create their own free public account, you can take this data set, and right from these data sets themselves, you can hit those links to create a story map or to create a web map so that you can take this data and use it for your own purposes. So right now we have a pretty straightforward workflow. So as we are updating all these data sets, we really have only one person, mostly myself for right now, that is uploading this. And so what we do is we do all of our analysis, we do our data cleaning, our data aggregation, and using our desktop software, we then publish this data to ArcGIS Online and include it into our hub for dissemination. And so what we do is every year we're going to be adding a new column of data to an existing data set that's published. And so we have been doing this process mostly so that we could capture not only the data, but also share that visual component. So what we do is we create maps, they're called choropleth maps, where each of our communities is color-coded based on its value representative to the rest of the city. So we take a lot of these data sets, we use them ourselves. We use the Storymap platform for sharing out our community narratives, as I mentioned. So this is an example of a map that we had pulled in to our housing and community development. So this really allows us to share this information in an interactive way. Prior to that, it used to just be a PDF. And so the idea is just to make this interactive so that different users can pull it in and pull it out and examine it. And so one of the things that we really wanted to also do is figure out ways that we can pull in other data sets along with ours to answer questions. So back in April, we were getting a lot of questions asking us to map out some of those community indicators that we publish along with other data sets. And so I ended up doing a little bit of sleuthing, and I found some of the data layers that were published by the state of Maryland. And this is actually before they created their open data portal, just doing keyword searches. So I was able to pull in information about unemployment claims, pull in information about COVID cases and health, and overlay that with our community indicators. So that's one of the great things that we've been able to do with the ArcGIS Online maps, of pulling together all this information. And we also do put together some dashboards, so pulling in outside information. So sometimes our data isn't necessarily that fully spatial. We've been able to download some data from the city, these flat files, and pipe these in and create different visualizations. So one thing, as I mentioned earlier, we used to share a lot of our data sets with the city of Baltimore, those flat files. We would email those over and somebody would upload it. Well, the city recently switched from a Socrata portal to a ArcGIS online platform. So they're now using the Esri Hub for disseminating their data. And so I've been in a lot of talks and collaborations with the city's data team to figure out how exactly we are going to be able to put the BNIA data that BNIA is creating, maintaining, updating, and have it queryable on the city's open data portal. So that's something that we'll be very excited about, because it takes a lot of the pressure off of the city in constantly trying to update this data, because it's data that we're kind of, managing rather than them. And one last thing that I do want to talk about is also how we're able to put this portal online and keep it open and available to the public. So we do have an educational license with Esri so that we are able to share out this information. It goes out to the public. Anybody can use and access our data. But one thing that we're always trying to be mindful of is that, there is a credit system that kind of keeps track of how many data sets and like the overall storage onto the portal, any special analyses, any geoprocessing. And so being very mindful of that, we primarily use our portal for just storing data rather than trying to run some sophisticated, like some hotspot analyses in here, because that starts eating into the credit budget. And then that is an additional thing that we have to be mindful of when we're thinking through project budgets of, okay, are we going to have to add a line item to cover additional cost of, storing and querying this information? So here's my contact information, and I'm going to kind of stop right here. I do want to mention, I know there was a question in the chat earlier about ways of finding information about how to use these things. And so one of the great things is that as we were releasing these data sets, so creating new data, creating new visualizations, new story maps, last spring we were hosting webinars every Wednesday that we did over Zoom, recorded and shared onto YouTube. So each of these has an opportunity to learn about some of the trends and data that you're seeing in Baltimore, but then also really that nitty gritty of how do you access this information and how do you use it in your own research, your own collaboration, and how can you use it to answer questions about your neighborhoods. So let me stop there because I want to make sure that we have a lot of time for questions because I know that we've got a great panel here, and I just again want to thank everyone for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike McGuire. I'm working with CIMA on this project to evaluate these open data portals. And first, I want to thank our panelists for coming and presenting. It's a really, really great looking platform. I especially like the addition of the Jupyter notebooks. It's really cool. I didn't know it could do that. So what I'm here to do, I'm at Towson University, sorry. I'm in the Computer and Information Sciences department. And our side of the project, a student and I are actually, we're gonna evaluate 3 open data portal technologies. We're gonna install and evaluate them for our Baltimore Data Science Core project, the project that CIMA and I and colleagues from UMBC and Bowie State are currently working on. So, I'm here to moderate the Q&A session. So if anyone has a question, I would encourage you to either enable your microphone. If there's a lot of questions, I'll ask you to raise your hand and then I'll call on you. Or type your question in the chat and I'm happy to read it. So let's start to see if there are any questions here.
I want to start off with the thing that Laura ended on, which was making sure you have standards in place. Can you guys reflect on, how would an organization create those standards? Are there standards already out there? How much do you have to customize it? Something like that.
I think for D3, it really really starts at like an introspective level. You have to think through your workflow, and you have to think through who's going to touch it, what's the end goal. And then once you've created a process, I would really have somebody else review it and find all the holes in it that you haven't thought about. It really kind of depends on, I think, what type of data you're working with. I know that there's probably a ton of wonderful tutorials out there, but I think sometimes it can be so specific about, because I could go into detail about, the types of data we use, but there's such different types of data that it really depends on what you're doing with it. So I would recommend that people just spend some time, because if you spend the time before you are doing all this, you're going to save yourself an incredible headache throughout the process. So really think through, don't think of it as something that you should do afterwards, and don't think of it as a waste of time. I would say it's pretty vital in order to maintain a long-running clean data project.
Okay, there's a question in the chat about the UMBC and Bowie State about bringing youth. I'm gonna maybe that's from Mary Alexander. Maybe you could connect with Seema and I offline on that, since I don't want to spend. This is focused on the data portals. So there's also a question from April Urban. Have you found, and this is for Laura, have you found the Esri language to be a barrier for any users? For example, all data sets are feature layers, which makes sense to those of us who speak geospatial Esri, but I imagine might be a barrier to the general public.
Yeah, I would say like that does come into play sometimes. I don't think it's necessarily Esri language. I think it's just GIS. I think that I don't think GIS is hard to explain to people, but if you're not aware of the concepts, then it definitely is a bit confusing. We do interact with the public quite a bit through our Ask D3 program, where we do free work for community members on any type of data analysis that we can't do for them. So sometimes it is just kind of walking through the basic GIS concepts. So I think the short answer would be it's not the Esri language, it's just the GIS language. And I find that most people, if you're able to, work with the public, or if you show them enough visuals, because at least for us, a lot of our data is visual, they get it pretty fast.
Okay, great. Let's see. Are there any other questions?
Also, just at that point, it is something that we're spending a lot of time and really value that you want to make it easy to put it into what generally vernacular. What do people call these things? So if you do notice in at least Hub, we do use the word data set. We, as much as possible, try and make it in a way that's approachable there. So, but yeah, sometimes, yeah, you get deep in capability, also the technical part shows up. Hopefully by then they've kind of engaged, and definitely what's important is what you've heard Cheryl and Laura talk about, just making it understandable with as much kind of description up front about what the data are about. And then we're also, just something else coming up in our near-term roadmap is you can expose more of what's called the data dictionary. Like, here are the attributes, here's what they mean, things like that, to help even explain, not just it's the trees data set or it's the parks data set, but what BBC means, basketball court, for example, and things like that to help.
Any other questions for our panel today?
And we have about 2 minutes, so if our panelists want to give us any words of wisdom as we move forward, that would be great.
So I have one question about kind of the cost structure, and this for the Anthony and Andrew. So if you have multiple organizations that have data that kind of surrounds, a certain, because like, for example, our project, we have potentially 4 universities. How do you host data for, across organizational, how does the licensing structure work for that? If one university has a license, is that good enough to house data for everyone?
You're pretty lucky you have a University of Maryland site license, which covers 19 colleges. So every one of those universities gets their own Arcgis Online org. As long as you have an Arcgis Online organization, not public account, but an organizational account, you can launch your own open data site through there. I think you might just have to have like an admin turn it on for you, but then you can build out a team and you can build out your own open data sites. You can host data in Arcgis Online. You can upload, let's say like a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet to Arcgis Online. That becomes a hosted data layer, feature layer. It's a data layer, a hosted feature layer. And then you add that to a group and add that to an open data site. And then that open data, as long as you share that public, then anybody else can get access to that. And that's really as easy as you can do it. If you don't have a university and you're a government agency, you get Arcgis Online with a desktop license. So if you have a desktop license, you have access to this. You can launch your own open data site. If you're just starting from scratch, it's $500. You can get an Arcgis Online account and you can build an open data site. So it could be as cheap as $500 to build out your own site. So we are trying to make it as easy as possible. We want to be able to let people share their own data. And that was the whole point about including open data as part of Arcgis Online. Now there's a cost structure for premium to give access to other people. That's really more of a public engagement piece, but that's more of the premium level. And that's what some organizations are doing. I kind of showed you a little bit about that with what Maryland and DC are doing. That's really the engagement piece, letting people take surveys or answer feedback or collect data in the field. And that's kind of a separate thing on Hub, but just sharing data, you can get started pretty easily. And for nonprofits, we have nonprofit pricing for that. It's very affordable. It's almost like an administrative cost just to get that. So we do make it, I feel like we make it pretty easy to get access to that kind of stuff, to build out your own sites like this. And Andrew and his team are kind of really working hard at making it so you don't need to be a GIS person to make and share these sites with that. And making it easier to upload and share your own data, collect your own data through those means. I'm sorry, that answered your question?
That's really useful to know about the USM.
How do the credits that Cheryl was referring to, how do they apply to the USM license?
We have a consumption metered model in Arcgis Online. Service credits meter storage of data or crunching of data like geocoding and buffering and analysis work. And so we have a meter in there. So if you want to, it's storage of data is very affordable. It's like 12 cents a gig for data up there. So you'd really have to, share all the imagery for state of Maryland to really have some significant costs there. But if you're just hosting Excel files and small shape files and stuff, then we're talking, dollars of storage costs there.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for our panel? Okay, do you guys have?
That's what Cheryl was saying, that we mostly use it for storage right now. But thanks, that was a really good explanation of how to think about that. But I do want to thank everybody for being here. This recording will be up online, and then, like we said, we're going to have 2 more webinars. So if you're not already on our Get Notifications list, I put the link on how to do that so you hear about our next webinar. And hope everybody has a great day. And thanks so much for our folks from Esri. Thanks from Laura. And of course, thanks to Cheryl for presenting today.
Hey, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the involvement here. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.